And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show, broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wangs at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, we're now, unfortunately, at an age where everybody and their mother has a podcast and are constantly plugging it, ourselves included. And that means that now even Holly Mitchell has a podcast.
Hello, Los Angeles. Welcome to the current newest edition of Just Sipping My Tea.
You think we have something to worry about, Randy?
No, because the last time I checked, I was the fourth view.
Quite frankly.
Is she the only member of the LA County Board of Supervisors with their own podcast?
That I know of right now. But I will be looking every single day to see if there is a podcast from Catherine Barger.
Quite frankly.
A podcast from Lindsay Horvath.
Quite frankly.
A podcast from Hilda Solis.
Quite frankly.
Or a podcast from Janice Hahn, which would have a fantastic name.
That's your final warning.
Maybe Sheila Kuehl has one, and they could call it Whistlin' Dixie.
Sort of, snowflake weepies.
800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. She is the RNC committee woman representing the state of California. You can get her online at DillonLaw.com and follow her on Twitter at PNJABAN. Harmeet Dhillon, welcome.
Hi, happy to be here with you.
Well, thanks so much for stopping by. So you are part of the Republican Party here in the state of California, and you guys are having your convention coming up in not too long over in Orange County, and you have the big candidates for the presidency all on the calendar showing up, including former President Donald Trump, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, and South Carolina Senator Tim Scott.
Yeah, that's all on Friday. So I fully expect that as our staff rolls out the rest of the schedule for Saturday and Sunday, you may see even more presidential candidates on the Republican side coming to our convention and making their pitch for our delegate-rich environment there.
Is California going to matter this time around? And I say that because we voted for a very long time in June. And when you vote later on in the process, you can be winner take all and in theory be the knockout blow if the primary goes on for a very long time. If you vote early on, many of the states that vote early on do so on a proportional delegate basis. California is voting in March of this year. The state pretty much decides when we have our primary. And this time, I guess California Republicans are hoping that the state of California can have a lot of influence over who the nominee is. Where do you see that going this year?
Well, California has the largest delegate by far of any state in the union, and even with the loss of a congressional seat, we still have 169 delegates, including the 3 RNC members. So that's many multiples of most states. So whether it's June, whether it's winner-take-all plurality or winner-take-all 50% plus one, we are going to have an impact. Now, I want to correct you a little bit. So every state under the RNC rules that's before, that is Super Tuesday, that's before March 15th, has to have a proportional method of allocation. So we've had to change our rules in the California GOP from winner-take-all by plurality, whoever got the most votes, to winner-take-all 50% plus one statewide, not by congressional district. So what that means is that, if I were doing game theory, the goal of everybody but the front runner is to keep the front runner under 50%. If the front runner is under 50%, which doesn't look likely right now, but we're many months out, then every person who finishes basically with even 0.6% can pick up a delegate statewide in California. If the front runner stays as the front runner or it's a different front runner, then everybody else gets shut out. So that's kind of the same situation as we've always had in California. Personally, I prefer there to be a unified delegation, whoever the nominee is. I think it's more fun. I think it's a better experience. And I think it leads for less mischief at the convention. But these are the RNC rules, and we will deal with them.
I'll tell you, I'd prefer to go back to voting in June. And I say that because I doubt that California is going to make the difference as to who the Democratic nominee is, who the Republican nominee is. But when you vote this early, when you vote in March as compared to June, it makes it so that if you have institutional support, if you have, let's say, the public employee unions behind you, it's easy for you to qualify for the ballot, to get the endorsements, to raise the money. And the Democrats are very good at putting the unions in charge of that. For Republican candidates, many of them do that on their own. And having their time cut short is a huge imposition to them. And my guess is that it scares a lot of candidates away, or scares at least some candidates away from putting their name on the ballot. What also scares me is that, let's say you're an incumbent and you get knocked out in the primary. George Gascon comes to mind. He would have almost a full year left in office to do whatever malicious things he wants to do. It's like if you're fired from a job, typically they have a security guard there with a box and they put all your stuff in there and you have to leave right then and there. But politics is a little bit different. If he gets knocked out in March and doesn't make the November ballot, it scares the living daylights out of me what he's capable of when he knows he'll never have to face the voters again.
Right. I mean, so to be very clear, California Republicans had nothing to do with the move of the primary from June, and that move took place in 2017 under Jerry Brown, and it was to make California more competitive for Democrats. And so is it going to be competitive for Democrats? Now, you know, for the Democrats, I think it is far from clear that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee. Okay. And so I think certainly if a candidate, say Gavin Newsom from California, jumps into the race, California will absolutely be a huge player in the Democratic primary. But the difference you're talking about in terms of a lame duck mischief-making DA is the difference between basically it's 3 months of difference, 3 months of mischief. And, you know, to me, the mischief is kind of baked in there. I don't know that it's going to get any worse in the lame duck period than he already is. It's pretty intensely bad right now. You know, the only good thing about being a resident of San Francisco is that George Gascon is no longer the DA here. So, you know, we have to all look at the silver lining. But overall, I, too, agree that it's early for my taste. But this particular primary cycle, I don't think there's any deterrent factor. Do you, John? I mean, nobody's hesitating to throw their hat in the race every time Dick and Harry's got their hat in the race. So I won't name any names there disparagingly, but there's a lot of random people in the race who are never going to be president or anything near president.
Well, let's talk about other races, including the U.S. Senate race, because we have 3 members of the House delegation, all Democrats, who have announced their candidacies, including Burbank Congressman Adam Schiff, Oakland Congresswoman Barbara Lee, and Irvine Congresswoman Katie Porter. However, the rumor mill is absolutely going nonstop right now as to what Republican will put their name on the ballot. For a while, there was a lot of rumors surrounding former Dodger great Steve Garvey, who has been looking at this race. He's, I believe, 76 years old, lives out in Palm Desert. But then over the weekend, Carla Marinucci, the journalist, had lunch with Willie Brown. And Willie Brown told her that he's been in direct contact with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Arnold Schwarzenegger told Willie that he is strongly considering jumping in that U.S. Senate race, which, of course, would shake it up. He's been elected statewide twice before. He hasn't been in office for many years now, but, of course, has universal name ID, has a complicated relationship with California Republicans. But I think a lot of people, we took calls on this yesterday for an hour, and people said, look, I don't like his politics. I was unhappy with many of the things he did as governor. But if he can block Adam Schiff or Katie Porter or Barbara Lee from ever seeing the U.S. Senate, then count me in. What do you make of that?
It's you know, it's funny. The Democrats were doing a whole bill on the caste system recently, which I think was a good bill. Actually, I supported it. But if you were ranking the caste system of Democrats down there, you know, Adam Schiff has a pretty tough row to hoe against a woman and a minority woman. So I'm just sitting back and enjoying the interesting, dynamics that are going to happen there with that race. On our side, similarly, Arnold Schwarzenegger is like pretty well despised by most Republican activists in the state of California, but Republican activists are only a couple of thousand voters, or maybe a handful more than that. The majority of voters, they all know his name. And I attended his inauguration. I attended, both of those celebrations. And I remember it fondly and all the hope we had and how bitterly our hopes were dashed as conservatives by his actual term in office. That said, would he be better than Adam Schiff, Barbara Lee, or Katie Porter? 100%. So I think that would be a very interesting dynamic in the race.
Well, and if he were to jump in the race, instead of them playing nice with each other on the surface level and biting each other in the back when no one's looking, that race, that primary would become toxic overnight for them because Arnold Schwarzenegger would almost certainly have a ticket to the November ballot, and two of them instead of one of them would likely be left off that November ballot. So they would have to kick things into high gear. And since there's not a lot of policy differences between them, the differences would largely be demographic or personal. And when you're fighting over personal issues, it's very different and much nastier than fighting over what the tax rate should be.
Absolutely. Right now they're playing patty cakes with each other, thinking that it's going to be two of the three of them on the November ballot. Suddenly, any credible Republican in the race changes the race, and so I think it'll be fun. Will I be able to get out there and campaign for Arnold, the Arnold? We'll have to get over a lot of water under the bridge as Republicans. So I'm not sure about that, but in terms of the dynamics here in the race and having a Republican on the ballot, I'm in favor of having a Republican on the ballot.
I'll tell you, I never thought in a million years I'd end up voting for Arnold Schwarzenegger for anything ever again. But if he can make Adam Schiff the angriest man on planet Earth and keep him out of the U.S. Senate, I would do so gladly.
That's what we're really looking at here. I mean, Barbara Lee is in that category of quite elderly, quite frankly, and I think that's becoming an increasing policy problem. Katie Porter is not elderly. If we're stuck with her, it's going to be for a long, long time. And so, we really don't have a lot of great alternatives here. The way that the demographics have moved in California to win a statewide race, as a Republican, you pretty much have to be a celebrity with a lot of money. You have to be starting with high name ID and be able to bring money to the table. And everybody else is just playing. And so, Arnold has been the last person to do that statewide. And, that we may need that kind of person to break the stranglehold of the left on this state. So I will welcome it if he wants to jump in.
Well, I think Arnold would see himself as being the Republican Joe Manchin in the Senate. The Republican that works across the aisle and makes sure the Democratic concerns are heard in the Republican caucus. And I always chuckle when I see Democrats complaining about Joe Manchin because that's what he does in their caucus. Usually, by the way, when the chips are down, he ends up voting with them. But that's
right.
The best they're ever going to get out of West Virginia. They're not going to get any kind of Bernie Sanders type of candidate out of the state of West Virginia. It's just not in the cards. So it's Joe Manchin or it's a Republican. If Arnold Schwarzenegger gets in there from California, not only does that give California Republicans a voice at the table, but it changes the entire math for the National Democratic Party because they never counted on this seat ever being contested.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so, I keep telling people outside California, they don't believe it, but I'm like, Dianne Feinstein is by far not the worst thing that could happen from California in the United States Senate. It could get much worse. And, that's what I'm looking at as a Republican. And so would I just pragmatically, not ideologically, but pragmatically, would I take a wishy-washy Republican if he can win statewide over a Democrat like Adam Schiff or, Katie Porter? Yes, because there are circumstances on which you can count on their vote. maybe that'll also help us get back to a path to one day we can elect a actual conservative. That would be amazing. It has to be kind of baby steps. That's not going to happen overnight.
On Fox News' Hannity program, California Governor Gavin Newsom challenged Florida Governor Ron DeSantis to a debate. According to the papers, Newsom never imagined that DeSantis would take him up on the offer. DeSantis went on Hannity's program. Hannity reiterated the challenge that was issued by Newsom, and DeSantis said, absolutely, I am in. Apparently, Newsom is freaking out now because he never thought it would actually happen. And the two of them, at some point in the future, are going to debate which vision is best for the United States. The blue state model of California versus the red state model of Florida. How do you think that debate is going to go?
Well, Ron DeSantis is a lot smarter than Gavin Newsom, and he has a lot to talk about in terms of his success rate. People are net flowing out of California on a daily basis into Florida, not the other direction. And so, just on the merits and on probably intellectual and debating ability, I would put odds on Ron DeSantis in that debate.
If you were Kamala Harris, would you look at moves like this from Newsom as an act of war? I don't think Biden feels like Newsom is trying to undermine him, but if you're Kamala Harris, it should be clear to you at this point that Newsom is trying to kneecap you.
Oh, obviously, and it's dangerous ground for Democrats. I made the comment earlier that Barbara Lee is in the demographic of the most reliable Democrat voter, namely African-American women. And it's dangerous territory for Democrats to bypass the senior African-American woman who should be in line for presidency under normal political calculations and supplant her with a privileged white man from California. But that's exactly the moves that he's making. And, I think secretly every Democrat would be relieved if Kamala Harris is permanently retired. She's been a disaster for them. But demographically, will they get punished by their own electorate for doing that? That is a risk for Democrats. So they got to thread that needle somehow.
Harmeet Dhillon, RNC committee woman for the state of California. You can get her online at DillonLaw.com and follow her on Twitter at PNJABAN. Harmeet, thanks so much for stopping by.
My pleasure. Take care.
And Randy, if you want to download the podcast, you don't have to be a computer whiz like the fake doctor.
No, it's so easy to do. Just go to KABC.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can also search for The John Phillips Show on YouTube. Everyone knows how to use YouTube. There's a playlist right there. They upload automatically. And then you can listen to every single hour whenever you want. Okay, now, Barbara Ferrer, I've explained it to you. How do you download a podcast of The John Phillips Show?
I have no idea.
Okay, it was a lost cause.
As we told you before, L.A. County Supervisor Holly Mitchell is now a podcast host.
That's right. It's called Sipping My Tea.
Hello, Los Angeles. Welcome to the current newest edition of Just Sipping My Tea.
Not coffee, everyone, but tea.
Today was an Earl Grey with cream.
Not iced peach Snapple. It's summer after all. Anyway, well, she has time to produce podcasts that no one's listening to. Her district is in complete chaos.
That's right. In the unincorporated part of Gardena that is solely governed by Holly Mitchell,
Quite frankly,
there is an RV encampment that is now up to 500 junky RVs, and all the sewage is going into the ocean.
How many cars does Cal Worthington have on his lot?
I think less than these RVs.
For more, here's ABC 7.
A massive outcry in East Gardena where residents and business owners call a growing RV encampment a health and environmental nightmare. Today, they met with local leaders to demand change. Eyewitness News reporter Rob Hayes was there and has the details.
Ooh, that's the serious music.
This is like after-school special music.
If you thought more than 20 RVs packed onto a Sylmar lot was bad, or the roughly 60 RVs lining Forest Lawn Drive, well, then you probably haven't been here lately.
Literally 2 straight blocks of RV garbage, RV garbage.
Thanks, Holly.
Hey, she's busy making a podcast.
And doing the weather.
Chilly Willy.
These are the streets of East Gardena and West Rancho Dominguez, where more than 500 beat-up, run-down, and unsafe RVs have overrun block after block after block, says the Harbor Gateway Chamber of Commerce. Local residents and business owners have had enough. Today, more than 100 of them packed a warehouse to meet with local government and law enforcement officials.
Can you guess who wasn't there?
Well, she's busy. She's competing with Joe Rogan.
We have to be mindful of that.
Today, more than 100 of them packed a warehouse to meet with local government and law enforcement officials.
We're just trying to get the streets clean and safe.
And this is more than just a nuisance problem. Lack of any kind of real sewage system means there are hundreds of people with no way to dispose of their human waste.
It's about to get gross.
There's a way. It's just not the way you want them to dispose of it.
And there is a lot of human waste, much of it ending up in the stormwater runoff drains, which pour right into our coasts, untreated.
Oh, the sea lions.
See, this is why I had to stop my ocean swims. I kept getting sick, and I kept wondering why I was getting sick. I thought it was from the oil from the ships at the Port of Los Angeles. Then I thought it was from the rainwater coming in from the various rivers that end up in the ocean. But no, it's the RV encampments.
We have approximately 9,000 gallons a month of human waste flowing to the ocean.
That's like a tanker's worth.
Yeah.
Out of these RVs. It's an environmental disaster, and it needs to be cleaned up now.
Making matters even worse, there are more than 100 children living in these RVs.
That's not even a third world country. That's a fifth world country.
Well, thankfully, their elected leaders are right on top of it.
The LA County Sheriff's Department says 20...
You know what? Maybe Holly Mitchell can hold an event to figure out a better way for these people to live. You know how she likes to hold events.
We're doing whatever we can to get people to come. Tacos, balloons.
Who would pass up on that?
She could even get a musical act together because we know she likes to play the trash can.
From.
The LA County Sheriff's Department says 27 RVs have already been removed over the past few weeks, but doing so is rife with obstacles.
The tow companies that we were working with, one, didn't have room in their yard and weren't equipped to deal with the hazardous waste.
So we let these things fester to the point where they are such a hazmat situation that the tow companies are not equipped to tow the RV. It's that destructive.
And think about this for a second. If your car doesn't get smogged every other year, they will come down on you like a ton of bricks because they say it's bad for the environment. Look what they're allowing to happen right under their nose. They know about this.
The area affected sits in unincorporated LA County.
Do not ever think about moving to anywhere in unincorporated LA County. Do not think about living anywhere that's on the border of a city to LA County. If you're going to live in LA County, live in a city, preferably Burbank.
The area affected sits in unincorporated LA County inside the district of Supervisor Holly Mitchell. She didn't show up for today's meeting, but
it conflicted with podcast recording.
She's looking to move up the charts.
What was she supposed to do? Sip her tea in front of all the pissed off constituents?
But
they'd be throwing tea.
Quite frankly.
But one of her representatives says Mitchell's office is rolling out its new RV pilot program in whole later this month, but can't say how long it'll take to clear these streets.
Supervisor Mitchell completely agrees with them that the county needs to move faster. And she's been on for 2 years, and we completely understand that the residents have lived with this for longer than the 2 years that she's been in office.
Yeah, but in 2 years, she's done nothing.
Yes. Wouldn't that, in theory, be something you'd put at the front of the list?
2 years that she's been in office.
But the people...
I mean, sure, if she did something about it, then she could say, well, this was a Mark Ridley Thomas problem that I cleaned up. We're not going to do that.
2 years that she's been in office.
But the people who live and work here say they needed this action months ago, that they're surrounded by filth and rising crime. Just last night, someone was shot and killed at the corner of Redondo Beach Boulevard in Maine. This is a community at its breaking point.
We're business people. You can't make money when you're in the middle of this kind of a toilet.
In East Gardena, Rob Hayes, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Well, there's been redistricting that happened on the LA County Board of Supervisors, and the South Bay is now in Holly Mitchell's district. If you want better representation and you want someone who's not going to ignore and neglect something like this when they've known about it for 2 years, vote her out and replace her with someone else.
And if that happens, Holly Mitchell will have all the time in the world to be sipping her tea on the podcast. In fact, in the summertime, she should be sipping my iced tea.
Chilly Willy.
So ridiculous. If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, we have a bit of housekeeping to take care of.
That's right. In case you missed it, you'll be able to download the podcast in just a few minutes when I post it at KABC.com. Click on podcasts or the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, YouTube. Search for The John Phillips Show. But John had an interview with Harmeet Dhillon just a few minutes ago, and she had some choice words about Senate candidate and current Congresswoman from the Bay Area, Barbara Lee.
I mean, Barbara Lee is in that category of quite elderly, quite frankly, and
we got the quite elderly, and I thought we were going to get the quite frankly there, but no, that was a pump fake. But then right after that, we got the full-on quite frankly.
Quite elderly, quite frankly, and
that's almost a twofer.
Even if I'm doing something else, my ears perk up the second I hear the quite.
Didn't Stephen Bannon one time give us like 3 or 4 quite franklies over the course of 4 sentences?
Oh, really?
I think we played it on the air once.
That's right. I have to find that one somewhere. That was a classic.